Hi, my name is Lord Rick. I'm the owner, the lead investigator, the producer of the Paranormal and Ghost Society. We're an organization that tracks the strange, everything from UFOs to Bigfoot to cryptids to even the Jersey Devil. And we've done approximately about 1,100 investigations. Some of them were looking into the Jersey Devil, while others were Bigfoot and ghost and other strange anomalies that are to be found across the United States and other parts of the world. And before I get into the whole Jersey Devil type of thing, a lot of you probably want to know what I think it is. I don't think it's a hybrid. It could be. I don't think it's a ghost. Sightings have persisted since 1735. And even till present day, which is 2013, sightings continue. Occasionally someone will see it, or even policemen have seen this creature. And I don't think it's an actual demon or a devil. I think that it's something maybe prehistoric, and it's lived in the Pine Barrens for millions of years. And on occasion, it happens to get in the way of other commuters traveling down the highways that go through the Pine Barrens and dirt roads, and people catch a glimpse of it. My connection with the Jersey Devil is that in 2007, I had packed a bunch of gear up, and I flew out to New Jersey, and within 2 hours of getting off my plane, I had rented a four-wheel drive SUV. I mean, this thing could plow through anything. It was made for the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens, where the Jersey Devil lives, it's extremely soft sand. And there's a lot of low areas. There's a lot of flooding. It's a very dense forest, so anything could hide back there. But within 2 hours, I was out there looking for it. I've always been fascinated with chasing legends and stories, and the Jersey Devil, it's one of the oldest folklore legends told on the East Coast. Besides Bigfoot and besides UFO visitations dating back all the way to the times of Christ. However, this was something that I had to do. So I packed all my gear. I'm surprised even passed through airport security. We had spotlights, we had sleeping bags, all kinds of different things. Rented an SUV. Within 2 hours, I was just traveling to all different sites in New Jersey. Ghost towns, hiking trails in the middle of the Pine Barrens. And it didn't matter. I wasn't going to quit. It could be 3 a.m., 10 below zero, and I would be out there looking for the Jersey Devil, because I was set on trying to find this thing. I want to know what it is. And, people say, well, it could just be the ghosts. Is there more than one of them? Is it a hybrid? Do you believe in the story that this deformed child turned into a devil? We have to kind of look at things logically. Yes, it could be a ghost of something that used to exist there. I'm not going to rule it out. It could be some cryptid or undiscovered species. I mean, just recently they discovered that these extinct polar bears up in the Himalayas still exist. Recently they found fur, and the DNA linked it to an extinct bear. So we have to take that into consideration. Could it be a hybrid? Maybe. It's very possible that maybe a horse and some other sort of creature, because it does have a horse-like head and it does have hooves, but it also has other features, could have breeded, which makes it an all the more harder creature to find. It makes it more intelligent. Hybrids are very intelligent. It would be like taking a human and taking that human and combining its DNA with an alien, so that human has alien capabilities. Just some food for thought. But before I delve deeper into the Jersey Devil, I've been doing the paranormal for most of my life, And for a while there, I was chasing ghosts. But cryptids are a fascinating field of research. Because you want to know, what does it eat? How does it survive? How come nobody ever hardly sees it? How does it get away with going roof to roof to roof to roof? Because as you know, over the last 2 centuries, people have found hooves on roofs. And it's obviously something that's able to get on the roof with its wings. And there's even a museum that has the cast imprints of these hooves taken from one of the roofs. So we know it's a hoof creature, and we know it's capable of either leaping or flying. We just don't know exactly what it is. What keeps this creature alive since 1735 is the fact that sightings still persist all the way up until 2013 today. And there were waves of sightings, like in 1909, people were being attacked. Policemen were seeing this creature. Total villages were being overran by the Jersey Devil as it would hop roof to roof. And that's what keeps it alive, is the fact of you don't have 1 or 2 sightings as opposed with the Dover Demon of Massachusetts. You have sightings every single year. Every single year somebody brings some kind of evidence about the Jersey Devil. And, granted, some of the photography isn't the best of it, but you have mutilations, you have hoof prints. You have all these little things which suggest a creature like the Jersey Devil is very alive and very real even till this day, all the way dating back to 1735. And it's been multiple times in the newspapers, in the 1700s, in the 1800s. It would always make the newspaper, but there would only be waves of sightings. You would have maybe for a week straight a couple local towns in the Pine Barrens, they'd be getting Jersey Devil sightings, hoof marks on the roof, and then all of a sudden it would vanish. It's like they would come out, maybe for mating, maybe migratory patterns before winter or after winter. It's really hard to say. And people just happen to be in its habitat. It's not in the people's habitat. We decided, humans decided, ever since the 1700s or late 1600s, to build these old towns, which cranberries is their main prime crop. And they would build these cranberry ranches and cranberry farms, which is a sustainable diet for something as the Jersey Devil. Now, I have read multiple versions of what the Jersey Devil could be or how it came to be. I'm not sure I believe in any of them. Today I was doing some research, I read 20 different versions. But there's 3 main versions of how this creature came to be. And the first one is about a woman, a very young woman. She fell in love with a British soldier. It was the times of the Revolutionary War. And some people, I guess the villagers were said to have cursed her. And the Jersey Devil came to be when she got pregnant. And I understand that back in the 1600s and 1700s, there was a lot of superstition. People were labeled as witches. People were hung for being witches. People would curse one another. They would believe that this was the devil's work. So that is one of the versions. And I don't know, it sounds kind of a little odd, but I guess when you get a whole village of people cursing at you, all that negativity could manifest into something more. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but that is just one of the stories. And then you have what mainly revolves around the Jersey Devil is you got the Leeds family and the Shrouds family. And whether you believe it or not, they are connected. Some even think that one of the leads had moved near the shrouds, and Mrs. Shroud was a very promiscuous woman. And so some people thought that Mr. Leeds was the devil himself, and that he impregnated both Mrs. Leeds and Mrs. Shrouds. And both of them were said to have a devil-like creature. But anyhow, the story of Mrs. Shroud is that she lived at Leeds Point. She had a lot of kids. And she said, may the next one be the devil. And I guess that child came out deformed, disfigured. And some rumors say that as soon as the child was born, it grew wings and it flew up the chimney or out the window. Others say that she had kept the child in secret for a while, and as it got older, it started mutating, developing the wings, the hooves, the horns, all these different things. Don't know what to believe. I know that she had cursed her own child or her own pregnancy. That I do know. And I did happen to go up to Leeds Point. I tried not to trespass or bother any of the locals. It kind of built up. But when I was there near Leeds Point, you could see Atlantic City at night. And you think, wow, at one time before Atlantic City, you know, you had this creature terrorizing Leeds Point. It would often come out to the point. And maybe it's because there's fish and the ocean's right there, the water's right there. That's one of my theories. But there's a third story. And the third story is about Mrs. Leeds. Mrs. Leeds, she had 12 children, lived in Estelleville. We visited the Estelleville Glassworks because I wanted to make sure that when I went to the Pine Barrens, I visited hot spots where the Jersey Devil could leave evidence or be sighted at. And some people thought that she had conceived the child with the devil himself. Of course, Mr. Leeds was also said to have lived near Leeds Point, right across from the Shroud's residence. And it's kind of strange how the Jersey Devil sightings are connected to both families. There really is not much of a difference. In this one, she claimed she cursed her 13th child, saying, may this be the devil. And sure enough, when she gave birth, it was a devilish-looking child with wings. It had horns. And in that case, supposedly it flew up the chimney and out the window. So we really don't know what to believe. And then we read other stories that the 13th child had killed Mrs. Leeds while giving birth. Some people say she made a deal with the devil. Some people accused her of witchcraft, saying she was a witch and had conceived and made a deal with the devil himself. Around the year of 1820, Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon Bonaparte's brother, had an encounter with the Jersey Devil. And it's not just famous people that have seen it. It's people who live in the Pine Barrens, because yes, there are many homes in the Pine Barrens. Even though there's many roads and paths that are very difficult to take or haven't been taken in years, there are houses. Residents on occasion do see the Jersey Devil, have sighted it. They've also seen other strange things besides that. But that just rings a bell. I mean, Joseph Bonaparte was in the Pine Barrens and came across this creature. The same creature that's been sighted in Delaware, Massachusetts, a lot of different New England states. It's not just New Jersey that it's sighted at. The big mystery to the whole thing is every time there's a wave of sightings, people find hoof prints on their roof. They'll look out their second floor balcony window, and on the balcony there'll be hoof prints everywhere, with no explanation, with no creature in that region to match what is making those. I first started hearing about the Jersey Devil in the 1990s. See, I've been doing paranormal investigating my whole life. when I was 5 years old, I took my first ghost picture, sent it into a group, and that group got permission to go to Fort Niagara in Buffalo or Niagara Falls and investigate the ghost. So I've always been involved with the paranormal, even as a young child. Never knew about the Jersey Devil. But in the 90s, about the mid-90s, I started reading about it, and I realized that this is over 2 centuries of sightings by reputable people, legends. It's very strange. You have to admit, it's very strange. Everything has to start from somewhere. Even if Leeds or the Shrouds did not give birth to the Jersey Devil, there is something in the Pine Barrens lurking. I am almost 110% sure of it. Whether it's a cryptid, I can't tell you, because we don't know what it is to study it. We'd actually have to have a physical body in our hands to be able to study its DNA, what it eats, what's in its stomach, all those things. And, over the years, people have gone out and said they shot at it and this and that. And there's even been stories of some attacks. It's a very real creature. The problem is where do we begin? Where do we begin looking for this thing? And so that's what makes it so hard to categorize as to what it is, because when you see Bigfoot, he has manly features and primate features. He throws rocks at you, uses tree banging, typical of primates. This thing, we don't know how it communicates. We don't know if it can fly long distances, if it lives in caves, if it migrates, if it's a combination of a pterodactyl and a horse. I don't know. Maybe some kind of experiment. Maybe back a couple hundred years ago, there was some experimenting going on with livestock and such. And maybe it just got out of control. And you look back at Frankenstein, there have been people that have tried to raise the dead, sewing body parts and things together. Maybe somebody succeeded. Maybe somebody created this thing, and maybe this thing breeded. Maybe there was more than one that got away. Nobody knows for sure. That's what makes the Jersey Devil mystery so fascinating today. As far as me believing that the Jersey Devil came from the Leeds or Shrouds, I don't think so. I think that was a time of superstition. 13 was an unlucky number when a woman had 13 kids or was accused of witchcraft, things of that sort. There's a lot of mystery that surrounds that back during that time period. It's a lot of, she's going to give birth to the devil, or she's sleeping with the entire town and being promiscuous, and the devil's going to get her, or this child's, these are all just superstitions and folklore. And it's very interesting that it derives from the Shrouds and the Leeds family, all because they had a large amount of kids, that the 13th one would be the devil. Then I heard that it was the 7th child that was the devil. And the dates was 7-7, and then by the year the child turned 7, it grew wings and flew out the window. I don't know. You have to kind of take things with logic when you're a paranormal investigator, but see, I'm not just a paranormal investigator, I'm a cryptozoologist. So I have to treat the Jersey Devil as a living, bleeding, breathing creature. And so, when you go out there, it might be the last of its kind. Maybe it is. Maybe it's the only one. Maybe it's 200 years old. Maybe it has a lifespan like a turtle could live a couple hundred years. Maybe it could live a couple hundred years. You don't want to go out there shooting it, even if you encounter it. The whole point of looking for the Jersey Devil is so that you could study it and find out what it is. But if it's a species that's going extinct, or some rare unknown species, we definitely don't want to hurt it. We want to preserve it. Over the years, when waves of sightings were taking place, this installed fear in the people. They were locking their windows, their doors at night, and they were scared. And they would send groups of men out there into the woods, 10, 12 men with their shotguns to try to go kill this thing. And so if you're wondering why it remains elusive, is that mankind is its worst threat. And that is how you could discover the species by killing it, but what if it's the last of its kind? Just as the Tasmanian tiger, it was overhunted, and now nobody thinks it exists. People think if it does, there's only 1 or 2 left on the planet. And being that sightings are so minimal per year, even in 2013 there was some sightings, but they're very minimal. But it still doesn't explain how in southern New Jersey you're getting sightings around the same time you're getting sightings, let's say, up in Delaware. So it has to make you wonder, is there more than one Jersey Devil? Does this thing breed? In order to survive, or for self-preservation, I assume it would have to breed, which means that it would have to, in order to survive and to continue on its genetics, it would have to, breed with other Jersey Devils in the area, so it can coexist alongside of mankind in the Pine Barrens, which, by the way, is a 1 million acre wilderness full of ghost towns from the 1700s, 1800s, all just rubble and remnants sitting back there. And you can just picture the Jersey Devil sitting on a wall at night and just squabbling or screeching. And nobody would ever hear or see a thing because you have 1 million acres of lush pine forest. As far as whatever happened to the other 12 Leeds kids, I have no idea. I heard a few of them died mysteriously from illnesses. I've also heard that they went their own way. You really don't hear a lot about the Leeds kids. Although, if you were to go up to Leeds Point, you could find all sorts of Leeds history, especially to the local towns in the area. And, if you really want to dig deep in the research. We know, obviously, that the Leeds kids didn't turn into devils and fly out the window or up the chimney. But, the Leeds family was very large. And, the whole thing is that supposedly one of the Leeds, whether it was the husband, maybe had an affair with Mrs. Shroud, nobody knows for certain. And you're talking the 1700s, and a lot of these things aren't on record. The only thing that's on record is the fact is that today, even as of present and in the future, sightings will persist to occur, just as they occurred in 1735, in the 1800s, 1820, the wave of 1909, 1960s was very big on sightings. And then you look at, for the 1990s, there was a whole bunch of sightings. And it's continuing on. There is no end. And that is why I went to New Jersey, because I figured I might just catch a glimpse of something. And if I don't catch a glimpse of something, I might be able to find some sort of evidence that this creature exists. And I do truly believe in its existence. And I'm going to tell you why in a little bit. But it's my honest opinion that the Jersey Devil did not come from either family. I understand that they said that Mrs. Leeds was a witch. But, this is a creature that has animal characteristics. It's not like it's some demon flying around. Yeah, it has wings, but it has a horse's head. It has hooves. It would appear that it's a biological creature of some kind. And, they at one time they said Bigfoot doesn't exist in the Pine Barrens, and now they're finding out that people are having Bigfoot sightings. Some of them, granted, are bears, but it just proves my point that there's so much more we have yet to learn about a region such as the Pine Barrens, just like other parts of the United States, just as Alaska and Antarctica. These are undiscovered frontiers. And when I went into New Jersey, I almost drove 700 miles through the Pine Barrens. And I put this on in 3 days. And I went down roads that hadn't been taken in years. They were so narrow that the branches were scratching the sides of the truck as I'm looking for this creature. And I'm looking both ways. You know, it's getting dark. I'm looking on both sides like that. And I'm just trying to spot where this creature could be. Because he's not going to be out in the open. He's going to be in the Pine Barrens itself, which is, again, a 1,000,000-acre wilderness area with a lot of soft, sandy ground, which isn't really that great for leaving tracks because all you need is one rain and it washes the tracks away. It's a very harsh country. It gets very cold there in the winter, very windy, lots of snow, and a creature like this can maintain itself well hidden for 10 to 20 years and not even be seen, technically. Unless it wants to get closer to some of the communities and some of the tourist spots like the Stelville Glassworks Company. It's a huge tourist attraction. People go up there to go on the jogging paths, but that used to be an area the Jersey Devil was sighted at. So it's a matter of, does it want to show itself? Are these incidental sightings? But you know, you have reputable people. You have police officers, you have firemen, you have local residents. They've all reported seeing this thing. And, you know, if you talk to anybody in the Pine Barrens, at least 50% of them believe in the Jersey Devil. And 50% of them have had a close encounter with it, where it's eaten their livestock, or they've caught a glimpse of it, or seen some hooves on their roof. Something's going on. Something. Now I'd like to get into hoaxes. If you go online and you look at some Jersey Devil pictures, they are hoaxes. People will create paper mache Jersey Devils, pinatas, things like that. They'll hang them in the woods. They'll take pics and say, hey, I got the Jersey Devil. It's the hoaxes that's really hurting this creature. It's kind of like a Bigfoot hoax. There's been so many Bigfoot hoaxes in the last decade, where people will stuff possum guts into, per se, a gorilla suit and say, we caught Bigfoot. And because of these hoaxes, it does hurt the reputation. Less and less people are going to look for the Jersey Devil with every hoax that it comes with. Every time you see a hoax on TV, it just makes one less believer. One less believer means one less person looking for the creature. I don't like hoaxes. When I went out to New Jersey to look for the Jersey Devil, I had one intention: to find some kind of strange evidence to say, yes, this creature could be here. And after driving down miles and miles of dirt roads, I can say one thing. The vegetation and the amount of seclusion that's in the Pine Barrens, anything could be back there. Could be living there and you wouldn't even know it's there. It could just stay within its boundaries. And when it hears a human, it could just take on off. It might have that keen sense of smell or hearing. We don't know. But with each hoax comes more disbelief in the creature itself. And that's what worries me. That's what scares me the most. Is that legends like the Jersey Devil are going to be forgotten if people continue to hoax it. Because if you really take the time and you go on Google and you research the Jersey Devil, besides my site, you'll find sites there's this one site with thousands of sightings. And each one of them is reported on what they seen, what this creature looked like, and what exactly it did. And there has been, I wouldn't say it's hoaxed, but I have heard of a few people being attacked where it swooped down on them, or it ran past them and knocked them down and ran off into the woods. I've heard stories like that. And, you know, people will look at the stories and say, oh, these people are crazy. And that's not always the case. Sometimes we encounter things we don't know what they are. And they're so fast, and it happens so fast that you don't have time to grab a camera and start video recording it. And I think that's the case with the Jersey Devil. I think it's very fast. I think it's elusive. I think it's intelligent. I think that if we're going to get it on camera, or, the only other way is to find a carcass. But if we're going to get it on a camera, it's just a matter of you're rolling that footage, you're holding that cam and rolling that footage as you're going through the Pine Barrens, and you just happen to catch a glimpse of it. Then again, it's a nocturnal creature. Almost all the hoof prints found in the snow on top of the roofs has been found at night. 3 a.m., 2 a.m., which makes it much harder to see, much harder to photograph, much harder to film. As far as what I feel like it is, yes, we know it's an undiscovered species. We've never captured one live. There has been rumors that it has been captured. There was a few freak show acts that have said to have had a body of the Jersey Devil. One of those buildings mysteriously burnt down, and with it, the Jersey Devil carcass. That's if it was real. We don't know. Freak shows like to try to tweak things. They'll take bones and connect them to other bones. We really don't know. But is it a dinosaur? Can't say. Is it an undiscovered species? Theoretically, it's quite possible. And when you take 200 years of sightings into consideration, you have no choice but to say it's a species we have not discovered. If it has wings, it has hooves, it has a horse's head, it's a living, breathing creature. It's not a demon. It's not the devil. It's not something that a parapsychologist could deal with. It's something more for a cryptozoologist to study. What does it eat? Collect hair samples, stool samples. Try to get some kind of DNA where we can put it out there and say, hey, we found a creature, we found DNA, we don't know what it is, but we know it's in the Pine Barrens and exists. Up until this day, no conclusive DNA has been found in the Pine Barrens. Not to say it won't exist, but first you'd have to find out where they're hiding. Maybe caves. Maybe because they have wings, maybe they're up in trees. You'd never see them up in a tree. If they're 100 feet up in a tree and they only come out at night, the chances of seeing one would be like hitting the Megabucks lotto. It's a very rare opportunity, but sightings do happen. As far as what I feel about them breeding, I feel there's more than one, only because there's been sightings all the way up into southern Pennsylvania and other New England states. Sometimes you would have one village with sightings, hoof prints on the roof for an entire week straight. And then 100 miles due north, you'd have another village with a wave of sightings and hoof prints. There's got to be more than one. Whether they're male, female, they might be asexual. It's just so hard to say. Chickens lay eggs even without the rooster. So you can only speculate and theorize that there are male and female Jersey Devils, and that they continue to breed, and that's why the sightings continue all the way up until 2013. And hopefully in the 2014 and 2015, hopefully in the year of 2100, the sightings persist. We don't want the creature to die out, because then we may never know what it is. And we don't know, maybe we don't find any carcasses, because maybe, just maybe, let's just say they're intelligent enough. Maybe they bury their dead. That is why we don't find any bones or any dead Jersey Devils, per se. Well, one thing is for certain, is that we have a moral obligation as a human species to discover the undiscovered. And when I went looking for the Jersey Devil, I had a moral obligation to look for this legend. And I felt that if I put together a certain amount of places, that I would find the answers that I'm looking for. And, of course, you know, there are people that spend 10, 20 years in the Pine Barrens before they have their first sighting. I know I spent over a decade looking for Sasquatch. Until 2012, I had my first sighting. So, you know, the people that are more likely to see this thing are people who live deep in the Pine Barrens, who own ranches, who own farmhouses, who own homesteads, or live in these small towns throughout the Pine Barrens, who might have livestock in their backyard where their chickens are being attacked every night. They might catch a glimpse of this creature. But it is something that is astronomically impossible to find. Where do you start when you have 1 million acres? You just go into the woods and you hope. You hope to see it. You hope to find it. You hope to see some sort of evidence. And that's about all you can do. Now, if I was walking in the Pine Barrens and I discovered a carcass, I would probably go to the news first. I wouldn't just hide the carcass. The way I do things is I film them now, I measure them, I document them with photos and video, and then of course if there's a way to collect DNA samples, we collect DNA samples. We have collected hairs over the years for Bigfoot, for example, and we've collected strange stool we found out in the mountains. But if I was to actually find a carcass, I think the best thing would be to go to the news. That way, you would get the most interested college, universities, and professors who would want to examine it and do DNA testing on it. Because I would want the best people on it to get the best results of what this thing could be. So if I found its body, I would take the whole thing. And then I would have the news do a story on it. I would find a university or a biologist who could perform an autopsy on it so we could find out what it eats. What exactly is it? What family does it belong to of mammals or birds or whatever species it is? I don't think that I would bury it and hide its truth from the public. I think the public has a right to know what is the Jersey Devil. And that's the problem. There have been carcasses found, and they've come up missing. Like I said, there was a freak show, and some guy had a carcass in a glass vat. People said it looked like a devil. It had wings and everything. And mysteriously, one night that place burnt down. Was it sabotage? A cover-up? Maybe people don't want this thing exposed? I don't know. But my first thing is anything, whether it's Bigfoot, a new species, whatever, I'm going to go to the press with it. I'm going to make a worldwide announcement. So if I find it, that is exactly what I would like to do. And I'd love to return to the Pine Barrens because it's just such an adventurous place. It's full of history. It's full of ghost towns. It's full of lore. It's got Bigfoot sightings, haunted places. New Jersey has a lot of old asylums and old abandoned ruins and buildings. But amongst all those ruins, buildings, and forest, erratically you have Jersey Devil sightings that have taken place since 1735. So something obviously needs to be going on for over 200 years. This cannot be folklore when you have over 200 years of sightings. And the natives, don't forget, the natives to that area are aware that this creature exists. And, this is not folklore. These are people that lived in the forest for their entire lives. And when you live in the forest your entire life, you see things like Bigfoot. You see things like the Jersey Devil. And that is why I think sightings persist. Because you still have a fairly high residential population in certain parts of the Pine Barrens where the Jersey Devil is sighted most. And I guess, we'll wrap it up with, have I ever seen the Jersey Devil? No, I have not. But what I can tell you is I went out to a place hiking called Hampton's Furnace. There's also a little pond back there, and we went off the trail, and I went a little ways back into the woods, and I found a deer, and it was mutilated terribly. I mean, you had the spine in one part, you had the pelvis in two different parts. There was no head, there was no antlers. There were certain aspects, kind of like a crime scene. When you examine a body, you look for clues, like how did this person die? This thing was ripped apart. I mean, you had the hip bones 10 feet from each other. You had the spine here. You had a couple other bones scattered. It was a complete mutilation. And I know there's bear out there, and I'm sure that if they could catch a deer and they're very hungry, they would eat one. But this was different. And to stumble on it, the way we stumbled upon it, I took pictures, I documented it. It was just a really odd find. And it's also an area that's had 200 years of sightings. And to go off the path and you find one bone, and then 100 feet later you find the rest of the carcass, you're like, what? This was a large deer. We're talking, this was probably a buck. And something took this down. And it mutilated it, and it went to town, and it ate it. And I went to Atsion and White's Bog and the Hibernia Ruins and Estelle Glassworks and a watering hole for the Jersey Devil. Very famous place called the Blue Hole. We hiked out there to look for tracks. We didn't really find any tracks, And you have to be careful because some hoof tracks come from various animals, such as horseback riders. So, just because you see a hoof track doesn't mean it's a Jersey Devil. I also want to mention one more place. There's these ruins called the Weymouth Furnace. And over the years, they've said that the Jersey Devil will sit on the ruins perched, kind of like an angel. Will sit up there perched for a while. And that's a place that has been a hotbed of activity for the Jersey Devil for many years. So when I went out to look for the Jersey Devil, per se, when I went out there to look for it, I tried to go to places that were relevant. And now I think that all these towns, these historical places that once grew cranberries, all have had some kind of Jersey Devil activity. There has not been a place in the Pine Barrens that's untouched by the Jersey Devil. It's told throughout the state. You have the New Jersey Devils hockey team, the Devils. And it's just, it's been around for so long. It would kind of feel odd if we knew the creature didn't exist. But we know it exists because we obviously know horses cannot fly and walk on the second balcony or third-story roof of a house. There was an experience I remember from my Jersey Devil expedition that I'll never forget. And some might think it's a little bit creepy or terrifying, but me and a team of 2 other guys had wanted to see the ghost town of Batso. The ghost town was established in the mid-1700s. Just outside of it is a place called Pleasant Mills, which is an old lumbering, cranberry type of district. They cut down a lot of the pines and they built up the town of Batso. And there's an old wagon trail, an old wood bridge. We're talking 1800s old. And there's a site that sits far back in the woods. It's a cemetery. And it has graves from the early 1800s. Of course, that very land, prior to it being a cemetery, there was a log cabin there in 1707. And for about 200 years, the town of Batso, it was a huge community. It's one of the most intact, largest ghost towns on the East Coast. And I went and I toured the town and just got a feel for what it would be like if I was a local here. And you could see the little cottages and the roofs, and just kind of picture in your head the Jersey Devil just hopping roof to roof, because the houses were so close together and they really weren't that tall. But if something had strong legs to leap or it had some wings to fly, it could easily get up on top of some of these old houses. And me and the guys parked near the Pleasant Mills Cemetery and Pleasant Mills site. All that's left is ruins, and then you have the cemetery, which is, it's an awesome historical cemetery. However, it's much more deeper in the heart of the Pine Barrens, where the Jersey Devil's most often found. And we parked, and then we got our backpacks, our sleeping bags, and we toted them out over this old wagon trail. What it is that they would take wagon trains through there, ship goods to all the little ghost towns that were at one time very large in the Pine Barrens. And now, today, most of them are ruins. But Batso is a big tourist location because mostly everything's intact. The houses, the lumber mill, the church, the town hall, the courthouse, the jail, everything's just right there. But it's surrounded by the Pine Barrens. We sawed off behind the cemetery, down this old wagon trail over a bridge, and we went out into the woods. And the guys, they pitched tents, built a fire. It was 10, maybe 15 below zero. I slept out in the open. And right before I was about to go to bed, I finished my meal. I had unzipped my sleeping bag, and I walked about a quarter to a half a mile in the woods myself, and I did a night hike. And so here I am. I'm walking down this narrow trail. You got pine trees on each side, and it's just this wide. It's barely wide enough to walk down. And I go and I get some fresh air, and I hear what appears to be a branch break. Now, like I said, I didn't see the Jersey Devil. So it could be anything. It could be a deer. It could be a black bear. However, moments later, there was these strange vocalizations. I can't describe them to you. It didn't sound like any animal that belonged there. It actually sounded like there may have been a couple Jersey Devils, and they were communicating back and forth. And I was by myself, and I felt real vulnerable because I had left the guys at the fire, and the fire is a safe spot. Animals and predators, they don't like fire. And I just have this little dim flashlight. I didn't take no spotlights or anything like that. And I used the bathroom, and I looking at the stars, and you hear something make a noise, and it stops. And you're like, what is it? What's out there? Who's out there? But when you shine in your light, you can't see it. And then all of a sudden you hear this scream, followed by another scream. Something was trying to scare us out of the woods. We were in an area we shouldn't have been. There's a lot of old wagon trails. They ripped up all the train tracks, so they have old rail beds throughout the Pine Barrens. They have old bridges. Sometimes when there's areas that are real low wet spots, they'll have logs that you drive across. That's just how the region of the Pine Barrens is. It's all sandy. It's full of pine trees. It's kind of like being in the tundra in the winter months. And when we went, we slept with patches of snow on the ground. So really nobody was up there. And what we did is we slept probably about a half mile behind the cemetery in the woods. We hiked in at night to investigate the ghost town of Batso. We also visited during the day to enjoy it and read about the history and all the plaques and different buildings. But we wanted to get the night experience. I could say with 110% certainty, something was in those woods moving around. It was watching, it was waiting. It could have been an animal, it could have been a predator. But like I say, if it was the Jersey Devil, this is an intelligent creature that uses vocalizations to communicate with one another, similar to Bigfoot. And that was my intense experience. Because when I was in the New Jersey Pine Barrens, yeah, during the day I'd visit some ghost towns, we'd hike on some trails, walk around, take pics, go to some historic sites. But all the sites that we went to were all locations relevant to the Jersey Devil sightings. However, we went to the greatest hot spot of all, which is just around Batso. The forest is so thick, there's so many trails that go to nowhere, and we went back there by a cemetery and out in the middle of nowhere, and we just pitched camp right out in the open for the Jersey Devil to come to us, to smell the food, to come near us. If it's an animal, it's not gonna come near. But I assume that because of our fire, it kept it at bay. But it was out there, and it was like nothing I ever heard. That is what makes me a believer in the Jersey Devil. I could go in the woods and look for hoof prints, or I could go into the woods and find mutilations, or maybe even a sighting. I know I've came close to this creature. I know it exists. But at this time, even in 2013, the Jersey Devil is probably more elusive than Bigfoot himself. It's an undiscovered species. It's just waiting to be discovered. And it's people like me and you that go out there. We don't do it for fame. We don't do it for money. We go out there to make these things known to the public that they truly are real. With all the achievements of mankind today and scientific advancements, it's only a matter of time before the Jersey Devil gets found. But anyways, I'm Lord Rick, also known as AngelOfThyNight, founder of the Paranormal Ghost Society, and you can check us out at www.paranormalghostsociety.org. I hope to one day return to the Pine Barrens. I hope next time I return that I actually get a really great sighting of this creature, even if it's just a glimpse, even if it's just for a few seconds. Just to be able to know what it is would reassure every myth, story, sighting, and all the folklore that comes with it. Peace.